All right. Well, we are back with another episode of the Reform Report. I just want to apologize to my subs. I've taken like a month and a half hiatus from YouTube, just kind of reassessing the channel and the direction that I'm going to be going in the future. Doesn't really affect the content that I've already been providing. That will continue, but I will just be adding some other content that I find a deep interest in, such as military history. So with that being said, I figured it would be an awesome return episode to bring Pedge Tattoos back on. We've been wanting to do the segment that we're going to be doing today on the Serbian former gangster and nationalist militia leader, ARKAN. I've been wanting to do this segment for a while, and I know I've been pushing Pedge to do it. So just real quick before we jump into this, I just wanted to say, pertaining to Narco Wars, that we were nominated for a 2022 Buzzies Award in the category of Best History and Long Format for TV, and we ended up taking home the Buzzy. So I wanted to congratulate all of the Narco Wars production team on that accomplishment and accolade, as well as each of our fellow peers who were also nominated in the category. So Pedge Tattoos, my buddy, is sitting here with me. How you doing, Pedge?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good.
Well, congratulations. I said that on the Facebook, but congratulations, man. All the best, man. You're doing a great job,
Yeah, I appreciate it. So today we are going to be covering a fellow
ARKAN.
Serbian patriot, ARKAN.
Yeah. So his real name is Zeljko Raznatovic, a.k.a. ARKAN. He got his name from a forged passport that he used many times, and it saved his life on many occasions. I think it was a Turkish passport. And I'm not going to sit here and babble about the guy like it's a history channel or I got some notes written down. There's a lot of info. I don't know about the guy, but anybody that was around during the 90s, conflicts and whatnot, any Serbian knows of him, knows his history. So I'm just here for you because I know you've been dying to do this. We've been talking about this for months. You want me to start basic info on him?
I think for people that aren't familiar with them, I think it'd be kind of just a good to kind of give a brief background on him. I would imagine that he probably came up in a pretty tough upbringing.
Well, actually, he was raised by a former Yugoslav Air Force soldier. So he was a higher up, and that was his father, Zeljko. ARKAN was born in the former Yugoslav Republic of Slovenia in a city of Brežice. And he was, early age, just, he lived that charmed life, you could say, because his dad was somebody in the Air Force. So, he thought he can get away with stuff. He was kind of like a little tough kid, doing stuff in his teenage life, always getting a slap on the wrists, and his father would always get him out of shit because that's the way it was in the communist regime.
Right, he had political pull. Right.
Right, exactly. So, you know how it is here, too. A judge, your dad's a lawyer or whatever. So, there's little, little ropes they can grab and pull you out of shit. But, his childhood was pretty much charmed. It wasn't that bad. His dad was a little bit stern, kind of put boots to him and, beat the shit out of him and stuff. But that was kind of like every Serbian parent, didn't even any Balkan parent, honestly, anybody that's there, they had that mentality. That's just the way it was. It wasn't like, you didn't get a timeout. Your timeout was like, you get beat for 10 minutes and, you lick your wounds. That's your timeout. But, that's the way I was raised too. So whatever was around, you got hit with. It was a slipper, a shoe, whatever. But so I mean, like I said, he had a charmed, teenage life. You know what I'm saying? Him trying to go out there and do little stuff in the street, he got arrested for the first time in 1973. He did his army time. That's a mandatory thing in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia or Serbia. You have to do like 2 years in the army. He did that, and he did that early because he was getting in so much trouble. His dad figured, the army would straighten his ass out. Well, all the army did was teach him the old Soviet tricks, like, look, if I could pull strings here and get my son out of this, well, what happens when, he becomes in the army and he becomes something, he just showed that, like, up and coming, like, he could do this and he could do that. So, the secret police kind of took a look on him, and they took a liking to him. So he did a couple of things, got arrested, and every time he went, he just kept saying, my dad is so-and-so, my dad is so-and-so. And within like 2 freaking days, they released him. It was like he never did any serious jail time. So then he got out of the army and he started traveling around Europe. He went to Belgium, he went to France. And like I said, in 1973, he was arrested in Belgium for a bank robbery, and he was sentenced to 10 years. That was like a hard thing for him. He tried to get his dad to pull strings. Nothing was happening. But this is where he cemented his stronghold as being a criminal. He escaped from that prison in 1979, and maybe it's a little easier, in Europe in those, like in the 70s and 80s to do that kind of stuff. But this was just one of many times that this guy just would get arrested, do a couple of years, and escape. I don't know exactly how many in total, but 12 to 15 escapes. He's never done his full sentence. He's always, gotten out.
So when he escapes, does he generally go back to Serbia and just kind of disappear into Serbia?
Yeah, there's where his dad comes in. Him doing that the first time, his dad was like, look, I'm going to get you a job. You're going to actually work, for us. So like, it wasn't official, but everybody knew. It was like, it wasn't official as in the sense that, he got a paying job, like he did certain things like that nobody else would do. Like, go here and, follow this guy, he's somebody big in the politic, area, follow him. And then like he had to wait for word. What do we do next? Either he had to set them up or he had to liquidate them, I don't remember when his first liquidation or assassination was.
So it was almost like black ops type stuff he was doing.
Yeah. Like what it was like I said, because of his father, you had to have connections to get something like this, and he was willing. He was showing, because of his, crimes that he was doing as a teenager, and, he's taking shots at people. He's even shot 2 police officers in Belgrade. It's like, I don't want to hop around all over the place, but his life was there's nothing chronological about his life. I'm just trying to give a broad scope.
Absolutely.
Of, what he was like,
and I think this kind of sets up what what we know him as well, the other side of him as a national patriot militia fighter,
Exactly. So he started doing that, and UDBA was the secret police. That was like the KGB of Yugoslavia.
So was this under at this point? This was Tito.
Under Tito.
Right.
Yeah, under Tito. So once Tito died, I think it was 79. He died. Once he died, there was still UDBA. They took turns. Each republic of the former Yugoslavia took a turn to run the entire country. So he was still connected in that field. After Tito died, like I said, he was going back and forth, and he was getting the favors of fake passports. Tito had this mentality that you don't do crimes in Yugoslavia. Go anywhere you want in Europe and do whatever the F you want. Just come back and spend the money here. So that was Tito's mentality, and Tito would give fake passports, fake identities, and then when they would get, let's say, arrested somewhere, and if Tito couldn't pull political strings, they would do a year or two, and most of these hardened criminals would just break out of prison. How? I don't know. But, bribery went a long way in the 70s. You know that. I mean, bribery was big in the United States up until like the 80s and 90s. So it still is today, but it's just not within our reach as, as citizens.
Yeah, it's more like political contribution payoffs and whatnot.
Exactly. But so in 1983, he, like I said, there was a shooting. He did a bank robbery or something in Zagreb. And the funny little story with that is that these two UDBA police officers came to his house in, civilian clothes, pretending to be part of his gang. And, he left some money with us. So he tells the mother, hey, your son left some money with us. We want to get in touch with him, give him back his money. She wasn't stupid. She was married to the father, who was in the Air Force, in UDBA, in all of that political circle. And she called ARKAN and told him. ARKAN returned, found out who these two guys were, and shot them. So that's where he really started to show that he was merciless.
Right.
Merciless.
Well, I guess he figured if these guys are willing to cross that line to play that way, then all bets are off, Yeah,
you know what it is? When you're in that kind of political realm, because I have some family that's in that political realm, you don't go that brazen. You don't just go shoot at UDBA officers. That's making your life and your family's life miserable forever. How much strings can you pull to get out of this? Well, his dad pulled strings, and he was released in 48 hours. No charges, with nothing. So, that was like the actual cementing his criminal, what do you call it? His criminal profile, because after that it was just easy peasy. He was getting passports like dozens at a time for different, South American.
Now, was this at this point? Was this under Milosevic's regime?
Milosevic came in the late 80s, because, like I said, there was turns. I forgot, in that time span, I forget who was the president, but it was going, like I said, it was going between the republics. So it was like Montenegro, Serbia, Macedonia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, and Slovenia. So I don't know if it was the Slovenian or the Croatian, but then right after that, Milosevic took to power, and I forgot what it was. 4 to 8 years was the presidency or something like that, and it was just. Everybody was just getting their feathers ruffled because, as you know, as in Serb history, at the time in the former Yugoslavia, Serbs in all the republics formed about a 75% majority. We were just separated during Tito's reign with borders. So borders of meaning like, you got all these republics. So, I don't want to, delve into that,
right. Just to kind of give the listeners an understanding,
exactly.
It would be like Serbs being in Florida and Serbs being in Georgia, basically. Exactly. I mean, they're that close.
Thing, a little bit closer, more like, Alabama, Florida, and then Georgia,
Right,
so like,
right.
All
absolutely.
we have is those little state lines separating us,
Right, absolutely.
So, during the 80s, he was doing a lot of bank robberies all throughout the place. And that actual bank robbery that I just mentioned in Zagreb is where he got his moniker, the Gentleman Bandit. What he did was he robbed it. He showed his face. That's how brazen he was as a gangster, as a criminal. And he left a rose, didn't harm a soul.
Right.
So he left that rose, and he became known as the Gentleman Bandit, the gentleman robber. And his escapes from prison are another story because it's just insane. In the beginning, it was just like, scaling walls, tying bed sheets together, paying off a guard, in that kind of direction. But towards the end, it became like cartoonish. They'd blow up the side of the wall in the rec yard, and like they would just put explosives, blow it, and then boom, he'd just like walk out, stuff like that. That's just like cartoonish to me, like you don't really hear stuff that far. And then one, I don't know how they got it. They came down with a helicopter to get him out. That's just insane.
It's like a movie, right?
It is. It really is. But he had that kind of influence because, like I said, he was connected to the UDBA.
Right.
Once you're connected to the UDBA, it's like being connected to Interpol. But, it was different. Every country had their own, secret police and whatever.
Right.
But everybody was on the take. It was like this one incident where I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I'll get back to it. I'm just going to make a note in my head. But all this time he was a flashy person. He was the only one to have a pink Cadillac in all of Belgrade. And he owned this disco called Amadeus with another guy. And he was a heavy gambler, like anywhere from Sveti Stefan, Montenegro, which is a huge casino in Montenegro. He'd be sitting at the roulette table, blowing thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where does this money come from? Of course, from all his capers and everything. Going back to what Tito said, here you go, do what you need to do, but come back here.
Right. Right.
But this is where he touched toes with the actual criminal world. From his teenage life, he met a couple of guys, and he always kept in contact with them. These guys, maybe we'll do a show on these guys, because these guys were the most famous, you could say, criminal organization in all of Europe, next to the Camorra, So these guys, I know one is Ljuba Zemunac. I think the other guy's name was Ranko Rubezic. Then I know George Gishka Božović. That was a big gangster. And Goran Vukovic. These guys were from the 80s, late 70s, involved in everything. Up until the 90s, one by one were kind of assassinated, except for this guy Goran Vukovic. He was up until the 2000s. He was like a big crime boss,
Now, were these guys were they connected with Bosco?
Yeah.
Or were they more competition?
I can't really say, because Bosco, he was here and he was doing what he was doing. They 100% were connected in one way or another. Ljuba Zemunac, his gang was in Zemun, Serbia, which is right outside of Belgrade. It's kind of closer to Novi Sad. That gang started its infamy in Germany and in Belgium and the Netherlands. They were doing so many bank robberies and heists, and they were connected they were like people not to mess with. It was insane. And between these couple of guys, there was some rivalries. This guy Goran Vukovic ends up popping, Ljuba Zemunac. It was like a tricky little mob war, with the way you have the crime families in New York, Lucchese's, Colombos, Gambinos, Bananos. Mm-hmm. It was the same kind of thing. It was kind of like a little bloody war. It was like who's bigger, who's badder, and pretty much like when ARKAN came to the scene, it was like everybody kind of knew that ARKAN was going to be the king of kings, like head honcho, boss of all bosses, and he was.
And two, like you pointed out, they, I'm sure, were very well aware of his how deep his political connections were.
Yeah. They and let me tell you something. With that, just so you know, the mob and politics are very intertwined in Serbia, as they are in every other country. But here it's blatant. The people actually know. They say there's two mafias. There's the government and there's the street, the street guys. But they're both intertwined. They're both mixed. It's the government calls the shots, they whack out the guys. These guys call the shots, they whack out political opponents. That's just the way it is. If you want to go dig in the archives of the news clippings, there's, you got Zoran Đinđić. He was assassinated, and it was done by the Red Berets of Serbia, the special police, which some of its members of the special police, which the leader was Legia, Milorad Umeljak, and this guy was a foreign
that dude was serious.
Exactly. So for those who don't know him, he also was you could say he was top dog. ARKAN was top dog, but he was also top dog.
And again, I don't want to jump ahead. I know you're still segueing into it, but obviously he eventually becomes part of ARKAN's Tigers.
Yes. Right. So, let's fast forward to the 1990s. The 1990s is where this conflict started. 89 was when people were talking. We don't want to be part of Yugoslavia. We don't want to. This is where outside influences came in and started, putting the seed in people's head, and then it started to grow. Of course, money was a big issue. They could say whatever they want, but NATO was involved in this. Germany, France, England, and United States set this ball rolling, So they put this in motion, and that's 89. 90 already, Croatia's like, we're leaving. Slovenia's like already about to go. They're mobilizing, the army there. that was going to be like a 30-day nothing war. It was going to just be a couple of shots fired and let them go. We don't need them anyway. There's not many Serbs in Slovenia. But Croatia started putting up a fight. ARKAN was sent. ARKAN said, he told UDBA, I can go and take care of this. He told Milosevic, send me, I'll do this. He went over to do some kind of arms smuggling, whatever, and got caught. He was sentenced for, crimes against the country or whatever, because they kind of claimed like they were going to separate, so they have their own country. Well, him sitting in jail for 6 months, all of a sudden the deal was brokered between the UDBA and the Croatians. And they paid 1 million German marks for him to be released out of prison. No contest, nothing pled, just let him go. Which was going to be a kick in the ass for them, because he was released and he came back and he formed, out of 1,500 hooligan Red Star Belgrade soccer fans, which were called Delia, he formed a paramilitary unit, the Serbian volunteer National Guard, called the Tigers. And he started to train these guys in Serbian camps. Well, out of the 1,500, he got 500 hardcore guys. And with these 500 hardcore guys, basically went to finish what he was going to do in 1990 in Croatia, where he got caught. So he went in there, touched base with the Serbian leaders, and that was Vukovar, Slavonia, that whole area. He even went to Knin, which is the second biggest city in Croatia. So he was all over, wreaking havoc, killed a lot of people. I mean, the tally, there's no tally. I mean, they say, 5,000 people are missing or killed in action or whatever. ARKAN had a good chunk of that. Like, he just went in, and 500 guys, mind you, only, heavily armed, but a couple of personnel carriers, grenades.
Right. Well, and too, I mean, these guys are basically gangster mentality. That puts them on a whole nother level.
And they're hooligans. Remember, they're hooligans. I don't know if people know in the United States what a real hooligan is. Well, look it up on YouTube. These hooligans take on the cops. They take on riot police with nothing, with a stick. Well, they don't care. They'll just go in there and charge, get the shit knocked out of them. But they're gonna take 5 guys with them. So they've been preparing for this for a long time. But like I said, once ARKAN trained them in the art of fighting and war and all of this, because most of the people, you got to understand, they got rid of the mandatory doing the army thing after these wars. They brought it right back again, because a lot of people were just like, I don't want to go to the army, and the army is dwindling, and this kind of taught you basics for 2 years. Taught you how to use a gun, how to survive if there was a war, a civil conflict. So that puts you in that mentality. And then you also got some kind of a career out of it. Either you could stay in the army, or you could, go on into a different field. Like here, you go into the army, you get to study computers, do whatever you want. So the army was a good basis. So ARKAN did it. Most of these guys that were soccer hooligans had 2 years or a year and a half of army experience. Once he trained them, he basically trained them like secret police training, meaning like there's no fair play. It's you go in, you kill, take over, and most of these guys, like I said, a hooligan mentality. There's no rules for them. One guy, I was just watching this on TV. It was news to me. He was one of ARKAN's main guys from this, from the Delia group, and he was an ARKAN's Tiger. He went into Zvornik, and he committed so much atrocities there that he was killed. But he did get arrested. He was released. It was because the Zvornik is on the other side of the Drina, and one side is Serbia, the other side is Bosnia and Herzegovina. So it's just that one little river that separates them. Well, he just crossed the river and, did what he had to do.
Right. So, and two, for those of you listening, go to YouTube. You can actually pull up videos of Milorad Olamek. Is that how you say his last name? Olamek. Yeah, there's actually training videos, and I mean it's intense, man. There's some intense footage.
He's got Foreign Legion training, so that's really hardcore.
Right.
Well, absolutely. At this time, like I said, ARKAN knew of Milorad, and his name was Legia. Legia is because he was in the Legion, in the Foreign Legion. So And he kind of like was like, I'm going to put you second in command. You come in. And he had about 200, 300 of his guys. And you've seen the videos. They're hardcore. They went in and they did what they had to do. A lot of war crimes were committed, but on all sides. Yeah, everybody does. They slip and shit a little bit, and they do what they have to do. But there was war crimes committed on both sides.
Absolutely. Well, and it goes back to like what I pointed out to you the other day when we were talking, where where the Hermann Goering, who was the head of the Luftwaffe in Nazi Germany during the Nuremberg trials, stated, the victors of war is always going to write the historical account.
Exactly.
And basically what he's saying is, had Germany won the war, that America would be sitting there for their crimes against humanity. So, I mean, and it's the same situation with here. Obviously, you're not denying that ARKAN committed some atrocities, but the other side did as well.
Well, yeah, getting back to this UDBA thing, okay? You know how many people from the former Yugoslavia, we're not just saying Serbians, there was Muslims that were involved, Nasser Oric. He was in UDBA. He did crimes for UDBA. See, UDBA made ARKAN, Nasser Oric, Milorad, Legia. They made these guys hitmen, So that's how they got their bones running around, popping other political opponents, or let's just say this guy said something and, pissed off this guy. We'll go over there and throw him a beat and teach him a lesson. And then they got carte blanche with fake passports or whatever. Hey, go into Germany, do what you need to do. We don't care who you kill. Come back and spend your money here. So that was booming the economy. All these gangsters were coming back and just spending all this money, and there was no crimes being committed in Serbia. There was no, gangsters shooting each other. Well, when the 1990s war broke out and ARKAN was doing what he was doing over there, and of course he was funneling drugs and money and, whatever. And then another interesting thing that I learned, trying to just get some notes down for this, was that during this beginning of the war in Bosnia, actually in Croatia, ARKAN reached out through one of his gang members, ARKAN's Tigers, to the Camorra boss Francesco Schiavone. So, but this guy was into everything, and what he was doing was smuggling weapons into Croatia and Bosnia, because they knew Bosnia was going to light up next. Then the next following year, 2 years, it did. They were also laundering money. Now, what he was doing, ARKAN was making a deal with this crime boss in Italy, which was, look, you know me, I was in Italy. I did a stint in Italian jail. I broke out. They knew each other. All these gangsters know each other in the circle. And he gave this guy, Francesco, inside, whatever he, let's say if he took over a business or, something that he did in Bosnia or Croatia, he gave it to this guy and he says, here, you could buy it at cost. You can run it. So this Camorra crime family has so much businesses and money coming out of Bosnia to this day and Croatia, and it's legally nobody's going back and taking these people to court and saying, oh, it was bought illegally or whatever, because everything was signed under duress. During that war, you're lucky to walk out with your head. You know what I mean? So a lot of people that had these businesses were let me go. You could have the business. They signed it over, and ARKAN just transferred it over to this guy, Francesco. Francesco bought it for pennies on the dollar. ARKAN got rich. Francesco got rich. Hence the now Italian-Serbian connection.
Right.
Going on from there, the outcome of the war. A lot more atrocities were done in Bosnia, like I said, on all sides. I mean, Operation Storm in Croatia, where they literally, displaced 250,000 Serbs. Nobody wants to talk about that. That's
of course not. And again, the victors of war always write the historical account.
Right. I mean, in 25 years, they'll be talking about it and saying, yeah, we did kick them out. Okay, great. Now you admit it. Can we come back in? No, of course not,
Right.
It's ethnic cleansing at its best, but we always get labeled for ethnic cleansing. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, ARKAN was kind of known for that ethnic cleansing. He kind of put fear He went into Zvornik. He went into trying to remember the name of the town now. It's on my side where my family's from. Dervente. And Dervente was a big population of Muslims. It was like, you could say 50% Serbian, let's say 40% Muslim, or 30% Muslim and 20% Croatian. Well, he went into there and wreaked havoc. And Sanski Most, a lot of atrocities. I mean, mass graves were found. Can you point your finger to ARKAN? Well, you can't, but he was the one to enter, and when he left, and then the regular army came in, and the other paramilitary groups came in, because, as I explained to you once before, during a civil conflict, paramilitaries just pop out of the woodwork. So let's say me and you get together, and we get another 5 guys, we make, the Mike and Pedge group. That's, what I'm trying to say? Like,
right.
That's your paramilitary. You get a patch, and you own, let's say, 1/4 of Bradenton, Florida. You know what I mean? Like, it's yours. Nobody can come in. You have to pay a tax and all of that. That's how these paramilitaries operate. It's village to village. So this village has a paramilitary. That village does. And I don't want to open up a can of worms and get into all of this. I'm just trying to let everybody kind of feel the perspective.
Right. And another thing to point out for those unfamiliar with the conflict, obviously, the Serbians, by and large, the ethnic Serbs, are Orthodox Christians. ARKAN obviously was a big Orthodox Christian. He always had that big gold cross.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and like I said, it is what it is. A lot of atrocities were happened, but like I said, on all sides, Croatians did their atrocities, the Muslims did their atrocities. It's just in my way of thinking, and from me reading history, and I'm trying to just be open-minded about it. But for some stupid reason, going through history, it's just like when the Serbs get together and start to form a union, it's always shot down. World War II, they backed the Chetniks, and then all of a sudden they put the flag on the White House. Yeah, Chetniks are our friends. They helped our downed pilots. The next day they backed Tito, a communist freaking asshole who destroyed the country, honestly. I mean, yeah, he did brotherhood and unity by force. And a lot of people to this day don't want to have brotherhood and unity, but they go along with it, and then mixed marriages. And then, this is where the conflict comes in. People have been living together for 30 years, but really underlyingly hated each other. This is what happened, whatever anybody says, they say, I'm proud to be what I am, but I'm also kind of disgusted at what I am because, as being as patriotic as I am, our people live on a double-edged sword. They're all like, everybody will be like listening to this and be like, yeah, ARKAN was a hero and screaming and that. But you get them same people in a room and you put one Muslim in it or 2 Muslims in it from the former Yugoslavia, and suddenly their opinions aren't, oh, yeah, ARKAN was a hero. Oh, yeah, well, ARKAN was a great man, but he committed atrocities. He killed your people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, well, but at the same token, there's always a cause to an effect. It's not like, obviously there was no, civil issues within the country. Right. It's not like he just went and just randomly took out some civilians walking down the street with nothing going on. He was fighting for.
I gotta correct you, Mike. When they got this Zvornik, this is where.
Well, I'm not saying that he did. I'm saying just without a war or a conflict going on. You know what I mean? Is what I'm pointing out.
No, he didn't, and he was friends with Nasser Oric, who ended up being the Bosnian Muslim crime lord and the Bosnian military leader and hero to the Bosnian Muslim people. He was friends with him. But when it came to the war, they never got to meet literally on the battlefield because, I think Nasser Oric kind of knew who ARKAN was and the capability of his reach, and he had a great respect for him. The same thing with, Legia. They all knew each other in this circle, this gangster circle, and this, inner, secret police circle stretched far and wide, and that was, like I said, a plus and a minus, and that's where the people started to get on the fence about loving ARKAN. Yeah, he was doing all this stuff for Serbia and for the Serbian people and for Serbian Orthodoxy, but it was dirty work. And once he came back, people started talking crap in the streets and this and that. Of course, ARKAN's guys kind of squashed all of that, and they put a beating on a lot of people and sent messages out. But, he was loved and hated. Like I said, I'm not trying to condone, the actions, and I'm not trying to, bring him up. He was a Serbian leader. He was for the Serbian people. He did things that me and some other people couldn't ever possibly do. And I'm a big Serbian patriot. And he's, I tip my hat off to the guy. He's done great things, but he was a freaking criminal. There takes a certain type of person to be that, that influential and that big. Some people do it through intimidation. Like, look at John Gotti, intimidated how many freaking people, and everybody loved him because he did a firecracker show or whatever, fireworks show every
right. It's 4th of July cookout.
Neighborhood, you remember.
Right. The people wearing the I Love John Gotti hats and everything. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Well, same with Al Capone. He had his soup kitchens during the Depression, and
there you go. So people loved him. That's the same thing that ARKAN was doing. The same kind of thing like Al Capone, because he looked up to Al Capone's ways, and he tried to immerse himself in legitimate businesses,
Right.
Of course, he did looting throughout the war. His guys were looting, sending trucks back, VCRs, TVs, gold, whatever. His guys, like I said, hooligans. He couldn't control them. A lot of those guys ended up facing war crimes,
Right.
And, fast forward, after all it is, fast forward to the 90s, around 96, he gets involved in politics. He figured, I'm that untouchable, which he pretty much was. And people dramatically voted for him. He was going to be the next prime minister,
Wow.
He could have been even president of Serbia, and at that time, Milosevic got taken out because they just gave up. Like, the people in the streets were like, no, Milosevic is our hero, blah, blah, blah. And then within 48 hours, it was like they stormed, like the White House in Belgrade, they stormed it. And the police just were like, we're not going to fight the people. And they just went to the door and were like, you have to come out. And they surrendered Milosevic to The Hague, So I don't really know, was there a deal? Because, going back to Bosco, going back to that 70s time where Bosco was anti-communist and the CIA having a little, they dipped their finger in that little pool of, mob influence. I don't know if the CIA came and made a deal. I really don't know. But that's the word. People say that, the CIA came in. And I think Serbia was like one of the last bastions of that Russia, post-war kind of like mentality thing,
Right,
but,
Iron Curtain.
During these 90s, while ARKAN was fighting in the war and everything, the Serbian mafia in Belgrade exploded. I mean, it was like up-and-coming kids. They just wanted to get out their name in the newspapers. They wanted to get, popular and famous. Like the guys that I grew up with, they wanted the word on the street to go around. Yeah, we murder people. We do this, we do that. To have that fear set, that kind of like, glory, There was a lot of gangs, a lot of guys were, doing time in other countries, but they were running the show in Belgrade. Then ARKAN comes back, and he's going into politics, and he's in the
Did those guys, all in all, did they pretty much get behind ARKAN, his political, right? Because he's cut from the same cloth as them,
Exactly, and at the same time, Bosco's going back and forth. Bosco's got casinos there. Bosco is there, and it's like this was just going back and forth. So everybody was a boss in their own right, but ARKAN was the head boss. That was it. He controlled. You had to ask for permission if you could put a machine here, or if you could do this, or if you could take over this block. It was a block to block thing in Belgrade. Those blocks were important. And ARKAN was going into politics. They were talking about indicting him in The Hague, and I think it was 99 or maybe late 98. Because he went into Kosovo, and then when he came back from Kosovo, I think it was 99 for sure that they indicted him into the Hague. He went on TV, national TV. If you look it on YouTube, you could find it.
Is that where he was on CNN?
CNN. That's the one. Yeah,
right.
Two. That was like 2 to 3 interviews he did. One, he was just like, whatever. I'm not a war criminal. I did what I did as a patriot. This and this. They didn't really have witnesses to put the finger and say ARKAN pulled the trigger and killed. He didn't. And if he did, there was no cameras around. There was no witnesses around. So we cannot sit here and say, oh, he murdered 2,000 people. Sure, he murdered, but he didn't murder 2,000 that we know of. Like I said, he was a patriot. He did what he did, and throughout Serbian history, every great Serbian leader did a lot of things that the ordinary person couldn't do, and liberated and did things, and
obviously, when you look him up, the narrative is always going to show the brutal criminal side, and and us doing this. I just kind of wanted to give a broad, objective scope on him, because again, I mean, obviously the guy was ruthless. He was a criminal, but at the same token, he was also a patriot for the Serbian cause. And there was a lot of benefit that I think the Serb fight retained from that, because obviously the guy was so good at what he did.
Well, we did have Serbian Krajina in Croatia. It was bloody, and then as I said, there was Operation Storm, where it's just totally helped. There's no way such a small army could just liquidate, or actually just move an ethnic population of 250,000 people out of the country. And then of course the Republika Srpska in Bosnia, he helped cement that. We wouldn't have had a state there. And he tried to do that in Kosovo, because he, for a long time, lived in Pristina, and he had the 2 hotels down there, gambling hotels, and he was making money, and he spoke fluent Albanian as well. So, I'm just trying to give like a vast thing of what I know. I mean, like I said, I took some notes, because his life was long. I mean, he lived to 47, but in those years from 15 years old, actually, when he first got arrested, from 15 all the way up.
So it's over 30 years of activity.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, one of his own guys, there's like a rumor, nobody wants to admit, was it done this way? But, they say the UDBA came calling for him, and this guy, one of his own guys, that was in his group at the time, walked into Hotel Intercontinental in Belgrade, walked up to him, said, "Hey, how you doing?" Shot him straight in the head, shot 2 of his bodyguards. He was shot as well. And then shortly after that, Legia is still running around, and Zoran Djindjic, he wants to stir shit up and change things in the political realm, and we don't want Serbia to look like this and like that. And then all of a sudden, Legia gets arrested because his Red Beret Special Serbian Police was behind the assassination of him. So hence, like I said in the beginning. So
you think that Olemek was behind ARKAN's killing?
I don't think Olemek was behind ARKAN's killing, but they probably did ask his group to take him out, and he, out of respect, said no, get somebody else. So they got somebody. The rumor is they paid this guy $1 million.
The guy that went up and shot him.
And this guy bit, and he did it. And he figured he can get real close, which he did. He got within 5 feet of ARKAN. Bang,
Wow. And, I mean, this had to have been someone that ARKAN knew well.
Yeah, exactly, because ARKAN, that one night, he always carries a gun. That one night, he didn't carry a gun. He left it in the car.
Right. Well, not only that, just because ARKAN, being the experience that he has, he knows better to isolate himself. You know what I mean? For security purposes.
Exactly.
So
and the Hotel Intercontinental was his base of operations. Like, Joe Massino had Casablanca. Well, this guy had that, and nobody dared. I mean, there was some attempts on him, but those people disappeared real quick. You know what I mean?
Right.
But this had to be an inner circle UDBA. They don't have UDBA no more. They got rid of it. Now they have, in today's day, 2023, there must be like 15 different branches of special police. You have special army police, you have special gendarmerie, then you have riot police, then you have the other ones which are anti-terroristic, then anti-drugs. Each group's got about 200, 300 people, tops 1,000. And then you have regular military personnel and whatever. It's insane how many people they have. And it's all intertwined with the government. They're all mixed with boot cheats right now. And that's where I said, like, that's the tricky thing. We don't really know what happened, and nobody's talking. CIA kind of mentioned the Gingy hit and said, "Oh, we had spec ops in Belgrade." Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that if Gingic wouldn't have been taken out by, Legia's guy, it would have been a CIA hit. Because the CIA is always behind some crap all the time.
100%. They're
getting somebody out of trouble, or they're putting somebody in trouble.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's the history of that. A lot of people don't realize, but it's like a lot of our militarized conflicts that the West 100%. Is involved in, which i.e. NATO, is always, you can follow the breadcrumbs. Generally, it is started by a CIA operation,
Exactly. So, like I said, I personally, I looked up to him growing up, I've seen him with my own two eyes. I've never personally shook his hand and met him. But
I was going to ask you that, actually.
Yeah, he had a presence about him that you would shit yourself. Like, it was just weird. I don't know how to explain. It's like, like my street life. When you met a higher up in the mafia or somebody who's a big man of respect, you kind of felt that presence, Same shit, except this was one of my guys. You know what I'm saying? To say, like, absolutely. I grew up with the Italians, and I was always kind of Italian, but I'm not Italian. I'm Serbian, and it was just insane, to see him walk, and like, you look at him and just like, and I drew a picture, which I'm gonna take a picture and give it to you so you can like show the
absolutely, yeah.
I drew a in fact, from memory, and it's pretty spot on, man. He just had a presence about him. It is what it is, gangster or not. A leader, it's like I met Karadzic. You could see he had a leader type quality. ARKAN exuded that. Like, there was just so much testosterone coming out of this man. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was just, I don't know how to explain. I really don't know how to explain it. It's just like when somebody sees a famous person, they get starstruck. It's kind of like that. You get starstruck, but you feel it, you feel that oozing testosterone coming out, and he's all man. It's like
he's a lion. He's a lion.
That's it.
Absolutely.
100%. And I don't know if the viewers have seen, ARKAN when he went into Bosnia. He went into the zoo, and most of the animals are let loose. He found a baby cub tiger, and he took the tiger. The rumors are going around that he fed them Muslims. It's just a bullshit rumor. He took that tiger with him, and they took that famous picture where he's in front of the tank and he's holding up that tiger. He raised that tiger in Belgrade. Like, it was his. You know what I mean? It was,
and obviously, I'll have those photos are flashing on the screen throughout this, actually. So
yeah, so I just wanted to touch that because that's what he's mostly known for, because that was the picture that was released.
Absolutely. So it's almost like his unit mascot in a way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Then there's actually pictures of Milorad Olemek with the tiger as a grown tiger, a large tiger.
Right.
So.
Right. I think that's the one where he's by the car or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like they're like in the back of a military jeep or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because ARKAN used to bring him out, put him on a chain, and walk him around the front lines.
That's awesome.
Send them back. That's why they had that rumor that he fed Muslims.
Right, of course.
It was, of course, look,
psychological.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised that they didn't say stuff about Hitler, that he drank Jewish blood or something, to eat their souls or something. But there's rumors flying, But like I said, I'm not praising the man, but I got to give him props. He was one of our leaders, one of many Serbian great leaders, and he did bad. I'm not going to sit here and denounce that he didn't do bad. He did bad.
Well, look, the war is hell, and any leader on any side in war is doing something bad.
Of course.
You can't come out of a war unscathed. You know what I mean? There's atrocities on all sides every time. Now, there's sometimes more atrocity on one side than another. Yes, sometimes. But I'm just saying that just in general, there's no amount of legality rules that attorneys can set forth for rules of warfare that is going to keep a soldier who is fighting for their life to fight within the confines of these bullshit rules. You know what I mean?
It is. I mean, because I'm hearing this thing with the Ukraine thing. Well, what's anti-Geneva Convention? Well, if the guy drops his weapon down, you can't shoot at him. He's surrendering.
Right.
This is war. This is civil war. There's no, okay, you put the gun down. What if the guy pulls out a pistol or, jumps at you with the knife? You don't know the intentions. You're at that point where you have to do that call. Like I said, there's so many things that, a lot of people have done, and nothing comes to light until 20 to 30 years later. And then what do? Backtrack and go, oh, I hate this guy or whatever.
Right.
Look, you either love him or hate him. He was here in this world. He did what he did. He left an imprint for the last 30 years or whatever. And he's still to this day. You know this. You go back to Bosnia or Serbia when there's a huge festival or something. And what do you see? ARKAN's face on a T-shirt, Radovan Karadzic on a T-shirt, Ratko Mladic on a T-shirt, Milosevic on a T-shirt. And like I said, 50-50 split, maybe 60-40. Hardcore Serbian people will never denounce, oh, yeah, he was a bad guy. But then the other people, they want to go into that woke new world and, oh, he was bad. He was this. He was, it is what it is. Look, I did this because you've been constantly getting into the Serb history thing, and I'm
absolutely. I'm absolutely intrigued by it, actually.
Yeah, and it's I'm not going to BS you. I'm going to tell you the God honest truth, and I've never BS you. I'm not going to sit there and just, he was the greatest ever. There's things that he did that I personally know people back in Belgrade that he sent his guys out and they whacked guys. It was just like a mob hit. Why? Because the guy did something on his territory that he wasn't supposed to do, which is a mob mentality. It's the mafia thing,
right.
And that's what happens in that mafia thing, like I said, I didn't know when my time was going to come, and I'm lucky that I got out of that. There's some guys that to this day, Kristin Golubovic, he knew ARKAN, he knew Legia. He, to this day, he's my age. I think maybe a year or two older than me. He's one of the only mobsters left of that era of the late 80s, early 90s, So,
right. Yeah, you're right, because a lot of guys that I've inquired about to you, you're like, nope, he was taken out. Nope, he was taken out.
So,
right.
This guy is the only, Christian is one of the only guys left that could talk about this. And he does interviews on Serbian TV. He does paper interviews. He says it like it is, just what I said. You got to either love him, but you cannot take away the fact that he was a great Serbian patriot. He fought for the Orthodox Church. He fought, and he got the blessing, which is a hard thing. How do you get a blessing to go fight? You know what I mean?
Right.
He got blessed as in go do what you need to do, but you're doing it, for the church and you're doing it for the people, which he did. Like I said, he left a lasting impression. Yeah, he did his crimes.
Right.
What do you want from a mobster mentality?
Right. Well, exactly. That is the background that he comes from. That's all. That's what he knows. So
once his dad got him out of trouble as a teen, he knew that he was never going to get caught. He's the most he's ever done is 8 years in prison, meaning total time. A year here, 2 years there, 3 years there. And his dad always got him out. Tito got him out. Udba got him out.
Which actually it plays a part in emboldening him of what he became later on.
It gives you that
understanding,
ideas of grandeur. So it's and he did what he had to do, and now he's cemented in the history books. In the Bosnian history books, he's cemented as a war criminal. In the Serbian ones, a Serbian patriot. It's just like Gavrilo Princip in 1918. So he did something for the Serbian people. That was the first shot to be heard in Europe, and then of course what ended up happening, we got demolished in the First World War. We lost 1.5 million people. Got bombed, got destroyed. But it takes people like that to take that first step. I hope that people find this a little interesting. I know hardcore Serbs will love it. The other people are going to shit on it. Look, I just did this for you, Mike, and I did it just to clarify some things, and hopefully, people, enjoy it. But I tried to keep it like two guys talking, what I'm saying, and just trying to, open up your horizons on what was actually going on and whatever.
Right. Well, and I think this is a good play that comes off of our Serbian history segment, because this is just a part of that, so, but anyway, I think, for just a short, segment, I think this will give people kind of just a broad understanding of his background and introduce him to people that may have never heard of him, obviously, that aren't familiar with the conflict or, the nuances of Serbia, but he's definitely somebody who has captured my interest, and I've done quite a bit of research on him and on his militia, the Tigers, too. Right. So and obviously, you are an uber valuable resource on the topic. So, but anyhow, well, I really appreciate it, Pedge.
Thank you. No problem. I appreciate you asking me, and I just take it as one of our usual talks.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is basically how our conversations go. For my listeners, this is how Pedge and I talk pretty much all the time when we talk on the phone.
Yep.
So.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, bud. See ya.